Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. A fire sale at Intel? Who would have thought? What's the future of software engineering jobs in this AI era? Speaking of AI, will AI force the platform engineering issue finally? You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hi, everyone. It's Alan Shovel here at Techstrong. Welcome to another edition of Techstrong Gang, our daily show where we talk about, well, quite frankly, whatever we find interesting. And we've got a few interesting topics to talk about today. We've got a great bunch of folks here for our assembled gang. Let me introduce our gang members for today. First of all, joining us from Charlotte, she is a literal Swiss Army knife for developers and ops and DevOps and everything in between cloud. It's our friend, Hope Lynch. Hey, Hope, welcome.
Hi, Alan. Thank you for having me here today. You know, I am very interested in our topics that we have on.
Oh, you always have good stuff to say about them, so thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking of good stuff to say about them, we're happy to be joined by our resident Futurum DevOps app dev analyst. I don't know if I got that right exactly, but nevertheless, it's Paul Nashawaty. Paul, why don't you set it straight? Did I have that right?
Alan, great to be here. Great to be here with the team. I'm practice lead for the app dev practice at Futurum. Yep.
Perfect. Joining Hope and Paul at my side here in Boca Raton, at least for a few more days, until the playoffs begin and the Yankees are on their way to their 29th World Championship. The one and only Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Looking forward to being...
I hope I didn't jinx us.
I'm looking forward to being in El Bronx.
In the Bronx. All right. So, guys, I let it off. All kinds of stories flying around with Intel for sale. I don't know if they're for sale, if it's solicited, unsolicited, but when there's smoke, there's fire. But is it a fire sale? First there was a lot of stories out there about Qualcomm, which, you could see that kind of makes sense, right? I guess. But now the big thing is, the PE vultures and sharks are circling, and there's money being banged, tossed around $5 billion, $6 billion. Look, that's not going to buy Intel. But Mike, what do you think?
I think there's a lot of drama here. I haven't seen this kind of show since, Barbarians at the Gate for HBO.
Remember that?
It's gonna be like that.
Cool. Yeah.
I think it's just going to be like this for months to come. And I don't think Apollo, the management company, is going to necessarily buy Intel for $6 billion, to your point, but they did chip in to build a manufacturing plant in Ireland with Intel for the next wave. It almost seems to me, and then I thought also the biggest thing that happened was that Intel talked about co-designing an AI chip with Amazon. I think that ultimately that's what they're going to become, is more of a designer shop, and what they're moving towards is the manufacturing side of that is going to be outsourced to a lot of different companies that may have been former parts of Intel. And we're going to see this be a trend. We already see it in most of the chips are designed by somebody else and manufactured in Taiwan. So I think they're moving to more of that ARM model, and they just got caught on the back end of it a little bit too slow. The number that troubled me most was $2 billion in cash flow for a business that needs $10 billion to run minimum. So, there was some concern here about how sustainable Intel is, and that's where that fire sale conversation is coming from.
So designed in California by Apple, that's their model.
Okay.
So I agree. The story is that they're going to spin the fab business out as a separate unit. I don't know if it's going to be a totally independent entity, but it's certainly a separate unit. And then so you'll have a design and then a fab, businesses under the umbrella. Paul, Hope, let me let you guys weigh in here before I weigh in with my thoughts on it.
Sure, absolutely. I think when we look at Intel, there's a lot of concern and challenges that are happening within the market. And I think Intel is kind of falling short on expectations. There's a lot of desire to kind of regain that market share that they had, right? And this influx of money is driving kind of towards that goal. Of course, we're seeing that as an opportunity to help drive Intel's value up. But I'll speak, Mike, what you were talking about, with regards to where the company is pivoting. In my world, I'm less about the infrastructure and the chipset, but more about the software side of the business. And when I think about Intel's software business, right, I think about the products that they have to offer, which whether it's the Open Vino toolkit or the open source projects or the One API runtime. I think about what they're trying to achieve, right? And when I look at my research and I see that 20% of respondents in our latest app dev research indicate that application portability is critical to their organizations across infrastructures, across environments, across locations and such, and 67% of respondents indicated that's very important to them. I think that the One API strategy that Intel is driving towards is really going to help accelerate what Mike was going after, right? Which is build faster, accelerate that API kind of delivery across different environments. And when we look at Intel One API, the DPC++ and C++ compiler, it really does provide the developers with the ability to be more portable, as well as rely on their existing and future GPU and CPU and AI accelerators to kind of help drive towards that unified approach. We see that 48% of developers are developing in a heterogeneous environment across CPUs, GPUs, and like for AI applications. This is an area where unified architecture is really helping to drive that approach. I think that's where Intel is going to help grow, and even if it kind of spins this part of the business off to the side and kind of runs it as an independent business, it's really going to help drive that AI adoption more of a software front.
I think Intel has always kind of missed that software boat, and they did it again, right? You see NVIDIA pushing CUDA, and that kind of locks everybody into their GPU stack. Intel has that One API, but they never really came around and said there's a couple of open source alternatives to CUDA, and Intel doesn't seem to be driving that very hard. And it's almost like they've become too reactionary, and they're always on their heels.
Very, very much so. And the point that you just raised, that I think is applying the pressure and also probably nudging the interest of companies like Qualcomm and the Apollo Group, right? They're seeing what's happening with NVIDIA, and can we get any of that, even if it's third place or fourth place, right? Maybe a little bit of a turnaround story, because Intel, they've fallen on hard times a bit. They are also having some financial challenges, as you said. They're still competing with Samsung and TSMC for chip manufacturing. So they need something. Something has to take hold, whether it is an investment or a buyout. They need a savior.
So let me give you the shimmy take on this, okay? First of all, as it relates to the Intel software stack, very nice. Paul, I appreciate the metrics you cited there, but I don't think literally the proverbial flea on the elephant or pimple on the elephant in terms of the Intel business. Let's be clear. We're all of an age here. Well, Paul, hope you're the youngest here, of course, but Mike and I are of an age where Intel is chips. Intel, it was the Wintel empire growing up for me, or not growing up, but in my career, it's always been the Wintel empire, and now of course Apple's in there. But Intel is an American institution. It's a strategic asset of the United States of America. And yes, we are all GPU crazed right now. And so if you don't have a GPU story, it's kind of like what the data center business went in when cloud exploded. If you don't have a cloud story, who the heck's going to need a data center? So they came up with the private cloud and all that. And it's taken almost 20 years for the data centers now to become what, valuable again, right? At a premium. I don't think Intel is ready to have their bones picked over yet. And I think the folks at Barron's are smart, and that's why they're making this deal, right? Because the wheel of karma goes round and round, and it's a bitch. And this current GPU craze and one company having, 98% market share on GPUs isn't going to last forever.
So do you think
quality is quality?
Do you think they have time? That's the question.
Yes, because I think between the money they get from CHIPS Act and will they get bought? Perhaps. Will they take in equity stakes from outside people? Yes. I'm surprised I don't see Warren Buffett at their door right here, because this is a typical Buffett, right? Buy low, sell high. That's what Apollo's doing. They're already partnered with them. Let them take another $6 billion stake for very favorable terms, because when that wheel goes round, they're going to be sitting in the catbird seat with it, and that investment's going to pay off handsomely.
Alan, I would echo, just to be clear on my statements, I agree with you 1,000%. I mean, the software business at Intel is a small little, almost sequitur to their business, right? But with that said, there's enough effort there. There's enough initiative there to either spin that off as its own initiative, maybe even create a sub business out of it that would kind of help drive that unification across heterogeneous environments. Intel, no doubt, is a chip company. It is a company that's built on hardware, and that's where their heritage is, and that's where they're going to be moving forward. The question is are they going to evolve with the times? And that's a big question right now.
And I think that the difference too is what NVIDIA is up to is they understand that GPUs may not last forever. So they're building a software stack that is a credible part of their business. I think when Intel was coming along, Intel was overly dependent upon Microsoft, and Microsoft woke up one day and said, oh, by the way, we can use all these other processors to run Windows. And Intel's been kind of like trying to figure out what their next great thing is ever since, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with that. They certainly missed the ARM race. Mm-hmm. That being said, look, this recent deal with Amazon to design AI chips, these kinds of things, no matter what happens in this election coming up, I think the path is clear. We want manufacturing here in the U.S. We don't want to wake up one day and our beepers are blowing up and our walkie-talkies. And Intel stands to be the biggest beneficiary of the CHIPS Act and of the billions of dollars that have been set aside to kickstart technology manufacturing here.
So do you think Pat Gelsinger over at Intel should get out the Lee Iacocca playbook and start saying, I need a bailout from the U.S. to resolve our strength?
I think in essence, that's what the CHIP Act may wind up being for Intel. But they need, you need a Lee Iacocca kind of lead, follow, get out of the way person for this. But number two, you need something you had to hang your hat on. The AI chip with Amazon could be something. The separate fabrication where we're manufacturing chips for Qualcomm and whoever else. Qualcomm, stop having your chips manufactured in China, have them done here by Intel. I think the U.S. government can force the issue of devices here in the U.S. need to be manufactured here in the U.S.
So,
and I'm a free trade kind of person. But I think that's where we're headed.
A couple of weeks ago, the head of the Department of Commerce, the United States government, sent that very message to folks and said, we would appreciate it, suggestion, if you would use the Intel fabs, but I don't know if anybody else got the memo.
I think there's got to be a stick behind that. But I do think, look, we spoke about it in Monday's show, I guess was when we discussed the Lebanon situation. This is a clarion call to supply chains throughout the world. If you don't have complete control of your supply chain, and if your supply chain is a critical infrastructure of your national interest, you're making a big mistake and you're looking for trouble. And I think that is what's coming out of what we spoke about Monday, and that's what can save Intel. You heard it here first.
Are we betting that Intel gets acquired, or do we think Intel continues as a standalone company?
That's a good question. Hope, what do you think?
I just feel acquisition it just feels far-fetched to me, right? If I were coming in with a bag of money, and especially if this is not a business I've been in before, right? I want to prop them up, support them, make sure I get my investment back by some multiple, right? But if I go in and now I'm taking it over and I'm making all of it my problem, that is a completely different proposition.
All right, my next question. Who's making the movie, Netflix or HBO?
Barbarians at the Gate 2?
Yeah.
In today's world, it could be any number. It could be Paramount, assuming they're still in business and they don't get bought, or Prime, Amazon. Who that?
Well, I don't think Amazon can do it, or Apple, because they're going to be in the movie. So that could.
Yeah, this is also true, Paul. But Paul, you think standalone or acquisition?
I think it's going to Intel have to reinvent itself. I mean, there's definitely change, and changes are coming. No question. I think the investors, to Hope's point, I mean, if there's investment in the company and an influx of money, it's going to reinvent itself to a way that we probably won't recognize Intel in the next 5-10 years. I think if Pat comes in and changes it to more of a adapting towards the market needs and the market growth that's happening, and the change in AI that's happening. Look, we're seeing across the board in the software development side that new tech stacks are being put in place, for example, WebAssembly, that's harmonizing the underlying architecture. It doesn't matter if it's AMD, Intel, ARM, doesn't matter. You're running it on a WebAssembly, a web application. In 2022, I would have thought that was Intel. Okay, look at it and go, not an issue. In 2023, when they started incorporating, multi-threadedness and .NET applications in WebAssembly, changes the dynamic. And I think that type of technology is going to make the infrastructure invisible, and the chipsets are not going to matter moving forward, as long as they can produce the results they need to support the business logic above.
I don't disagree. But hardware does matter. I think that's the lesson of the last year or two. Look at NVIDIA. And I'll give you another dark horse with Intel. Dell.
Maybe.
Anyway,
I'm going to vote for investment.
I'm voting. You're voting investment too.
Because creating another monopoly is a bad idea.
Absolutely. And we need strong U.S.-based companies here. I like to see Dell invest. Let Michael write a check. On this note, though, I've got to tell you, I'm trying to line up Daniel Newman at Futurum, who obviously covers the chip market and is always on CNBC and those. Hopefully we'll have something maybe tomorrow from Daniel and his take on it. But for now, let's take a break. That's enough on Intel. We're going to come back and talk about a small thing like the future of software engineering jobs. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
In a world where every line of code powers the future, every keystroke can introduce new threats. As software evolves, so must security. It's time to rethink how we protect our digital world. Join the leaders in DevSecOps and AI at the OpenText DevSecOps Virtual Summit on September 24th. Discover how innovation is transforming software delivery. Faster, more secure, and smarter. From AI-driven security to the truth behind cloud security, get the insights that will keep you ahead of the curve. Don't just watch the future unfold. Be part of it. Register now and secure your place in tomorrow's world.
All right, folks, we're back. And the folks over at the Wall Street Journal wrote an article saying that, well, the number of software engineering jobs are down significantly, at least in terms of listings. And that's not a surprise given the current state of the economy. But what it is to be a software engineer is changing. And that's a big question. And it's not clear to us whether or not it's the economy or whether or not people are trying to figure out what a software engineer is before they go hire the next wave because of the introduction of AI into all these workflows. Hope, I know you're close to this whole subject. Let's start with you. But what do you think is going on here in this job market? And what are you hearing from folks in terms of, well, what are they looking for software engineers?
Yeah, there's definitely some recalibration happening, partly because everyone is looking for an AI skill set. So if you are an engineer with an AI skill set, you know ML ops, AI ops, maybe you have some data engineering skills that can go along with it. You probably are still somewhat in demand, but for other engineers, other software engineers, especially those that are very, very entry level, they are being automated and AI'd to the side because automation is taking care of a lot of the repetitive things, those tasks that don't require as much creative thought and deep thinking. AI is coming along and scooping those away as well. So I think there will be somewhat of a comeback, however, because we are still at such an early stage of what organizations are realizing they can do with AI. And I am saying beyond generative AI, I think it's awakened people's imagination and helped them start to investigate AI more. And the things that the engineers will do, some of those things have been there for years, possibly even for decades, but enterprises just have not shown that deep of an interest. But now it's a little easier to approach. I think they're going to shift more roles in that direction.
Paul?
Yeah, look, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Hope said, but let me add a different perspective. I think that this article and the media in general, this is just another case of the media overemphasizing, looking for clickbait for, hey, you got to jump on, read my article, right? I mean, look, this is throughout my entire career and all of our careers, we've had a natural herding of the, culling of the herd, that happens within organizations to kind of restructure, retool, refocus on things. But I'll throw some data out there just because it kind of aligns to what Hope was saying, also aligns to where the market's going. There's definitely an interest for, software engineers that understand AI tool sets, no question. But what we're seeing in our research is 67% of organizations are looking to hire IT generalists over specialists moving forward. And the reason behind that is because that the skill gap issue is a real thing. They can't find people that know how to do the job. Second, what they're doing is they're pushing the level of complexity back to vendors. They're saying, vendors, you need to solve this problem, and our generalists can do the deployments. So the role of the software engineer is not going away. The role of the software engineer is going to continue to move forward. The generalist approach is, from our data, is really where organizations are hiring. They're looking at that because, one, they're available, and two, they're pushing that complexity back on the vendors to fix it. Now, Hope brought up a good point. This tool set of tech stack has been available for a long time. Automation it's not new, right? This is something that's been available for a long time, and organizations haven't been able to capitalize on it. Now, there's an incredible push right now to incorporate automation into those call it tedious or redundant tasks, to focus more on innovation than focus on maintenance. In fact, I run a trending study every year, and not surprisingly, over the last 5 years, we've seen a third of software developers spend their time on innovation, and 66% of their time is spent on maintenance. Organizations need to move away from that, especially those organizations that heavily rely on their software to generate revenue for their business. They need to continuously innovate, right? And so utilizing automation and AI tech stacks in order to get you there, that's how you're going to move more towards that innovation versus maintenance mode. But that's where I think it's going. I mean, this is not, again, I don't look at the media as a source of truth at all, because it's just about, let me click on my article and read it. It's the top headline to catch it. But other than that, it's really about what natural attrition that's happening within organizations.
I think that they needed to look a little deeper into this, right? So are the number of software engineering jobs down? Yes. Are most of those jobs that are down probably from tech companies? Absolutely. We put together every Monday a list called the 5 Great DevOps Job Opportunities, and we put this together every weekend, and we look at this thing. And what you see in there, if you kind of poke in the data a little bit in the listings, is that the number of jobs for traditional enterprises for software engineers, they're still looking hard and heavy for those folks. And they would happily take some of the folks who have worked for tech companies. But those jobs are not in San Francisco and the Bay Area. They're in places like New York and North Carolina and Texas and even here in Florida. So I think people who are software engineers may have to look beyond their current regional areas. And I think that's a big part of what's going on in this whole analysis. And also, if you look at it, one of the things that is apparent is the number of people applying for jobs on LinkedIn for software engineers is up. So you might have seen back in a couple of months ago, maybe, the listing would say 25 people have applied for this. Now it's like, 100 people have applied for that. So there's definitely more people applying for those jobs, but I'm not seeing the demand for software engineering decline outside of the core tech sector.
Yeah. And one of the other points that I think is valid here as well. Over the course of my career in technology, I have seen, salaries start out somewhat normalized and then, they really inflated. And now a lot of those salaries seem to be settling back down to earth a bit. So when you have software engineers who were at FANG or in that rarefied air somewhat, and now there are layoffs and they are looking for roles, most of those people are going to go toward the same roles that have those higher salary requirements. So there are organizations who are struggling to find software developers because the salaries that they will pay, maybe they're in middle America, maybe they are somewhere in rural North Carolina, are not going to be the salaries of those tech centers. So that has to play out somehow as well.
Yeah, we're okay. I agree with both what you said and what Mike was talking about. But I take companies like, and I'm just going to throw a company out there, not endorsing or not or saying anything. I take a company like Oracle, right? Oracle in the Northeast, in the New York, Connecticut area, had 6 different offices pre-COVID. They have 0 offices now in the Northeast, right? And all of the employees in the Northeast. That doesn't mean the employees are not in the Northeast. They just work from home. Right. So we have to get rid of this mindset of all the innovation in software engineering is out of California or out of a specific region. It is a global effort now. And, if we're around this, just call it domestically around the States, those jobs are available. Those skills are available, regardless if you're in rural North Carolina or you're in the Valley. Those jobs are there and you can get them done remotely because look at companies like Oracle that are doing this. Right. And most companies that
I'm a believer. Believe me, I am absolutely a believer. I am one of those people's no borders, let anyone work where they want. But whether it's a small sample size or large, there are still people who say, I looked at this remote role, but I must live in a certain state. Even in that state, maybe I can only live in certain cities.
then I will go to your other comment about normalization or harmonization of salaries.
Yes.
If somebody was blessed to have a job that was paying a huge salary, and that job then went away, they have to have realistic expectations of what that role was paying.
True. Very true.
It's hard. It's hard. So I have some thoughts on this one too.
Just a few.
Just a few. First of all, in my entire career, there's never been a technology innovation that didn't end up creating net plus new jobs. And I think the same is going to be true for this AI thing. Let's not make it the AI boogeyman that's killing all the jobs. Number two, I think as much as, those Oracle jobs, Paul, those were salespeople, because it was great being an Oracle sales guy in New York. You made $1 million a year. And now not having to go to the office and do it from home and, go into Wall Street once a week or into Manhattan, it's a great thing. There weren't people sweatshopping at Oracle software development hubs on Madison Avenue or something, Those were sales jobs. I do think we are seeing a great rebound of companies saying, hey, you got to come into the office. Amazon's done it. Dell has said you could stay home. You'll just never get a promotion, right? But otherwise come in the office. People are coming back to offices. I will tell you as a CEO, I think people working from home, unless they're a very responsible person, and the exception rather than the rule, your organization is much more efficient working in the office together. The communication, there's a lot of reasons, but it's much better. That being said, I think the future is this. We probably have 27, 30 million developers in the world today, heading to 40 million or so in 10 years. I think in 15 years, though, with the advent of AI, we're going to have 500 million developers. I think every software engineer will be a developer, because it takes nothing. It will take there's a very low bar to entry to develop software when AI can write it for you. Excuse me. But that's going to create other opportunities. Some of them are obvious and some of them are not so obvious for a lot of jobs around software engineering. And that's why I like that we call it software engineering and not just development. Whether it's ops or something else, necessity is the mother of invention. And there's going to be a ton of opportunities here. So don't throw away your computer science degrees just yet and go take pharmacy or something. There's going to be a lot of opportunity. And a thing I've always learned, and I was told this as a young man, smart people find opportunity in every nook and cranny, and there will be opportunities here. So don't discourage, don't despair. But I don't know if I'd live in rural North Carolina. Good?
Good, I think.
That was a good way to end that.
Yeah, and who knows? There might be software engineering hubs in the Bronx now because, we can do.
There probably is. I've heard.
We will see.
All right. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong Gang, and we're coming back with our last block, which is, will AI force the platform engineering issue? I feel a disturbance in the force, Mike. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks. Well, coming off that last conversation, we are going to talk a little bit about, what impact will AI have on software engineering? We've heard about the rise of platform engineering, and trouble with platform engineering is you ask 12 people what it means and you'll get 15 explanations. So one of the issues, though, that's pretty clear is that it's getting more complex to develop software in the sense that there are lots of AI models that people are using, and there's different kinds of them, and you have to manage which one to use at what particular point. It's not just Gen AI, there's causal AI, there's predictive AI, and all these things go into software development now. So I'd like to get your insight here, but is on the one hand, it's easier to build software, but managing the whole process seems like it might get more complex as I have all these different AI agents that I'm using for different tasks.
Agreed. Platform engineering to the rescue. So platform engineering definitely can help by using a lot of the same tools that platform engineering already uses. Bringing in some standardization, having a standardized framework to manage the operational complexity that comes along with AI systems, how to integrate the development and operations to AI in a way that is scalable and also sustainable, because AI does not live by itself on an island. It has to be part of the SDLC, has to be part of the workflow, has to be part of the way business and work gets done. So platform engineering definitely will be a critical enabler for this, and making sure that organizations aren't just overwhelmed and overrun by the complexity that's going to be part of it.
Paul, you want to weigh in here a little bit? What are you seeing in terms of what does the software engineer of the future need to be? And there was an article, somebody was interviewing Kelsey Hightower, who came to fame as a result of his work in Google and Kubernetes. And he was just saying, ignore Gen AI for now until we see what it becomes and what we become.
Yeah, well, I think I'll echo a lot of what Hope was talking about. When we look at the CI/CD pipeline and across day 0, day 1 to day 2, build, release, and operations, anything that touches the SDLC, it needs to be optimized and have operational efficiencies in order to get the code out the door. I mean, business KPIs are trying to push code out the door very rapidly. And in fact, we see in our research that 24% of organizations want to push code out the door on an hourly basis, yet only 8% are able to do so. And part of the reason they do that is because they don't have these operational efficiencies within their CI/CD pipeline. The other fact is we see that there's an incredible boost of applications being created, far more applications, 50 to 100% more applications being created now than just 3 years ago with the same or fewer resources. So in order to continue to grow and continue to build this momentum of what business KPIs are driving for these software developers to create these applications, they're going to need to use the appropriate tech stacks in order to do so. Gen AI and natural language and ways to drive and build your code is a tool. It's a tool to make it faster. I mean, you can use a hand screwdriver and screw the screw into the wall. You can use a drill, right? I think Gen AI is the drill, right? And if you have to release code faster, if you have to create those applications faster with fewer resources, you need to be more optimized to do so. And I think that's where the AI trend is going to kind of help push this out.
If you look at the article that they're in our notes for this block, it's about, you've got 150 different models. How do you herd those cats? And then you mentioned, ask people what platform engineering is, you get a bunch of answers. Here's what it is. And you can diverge where you like, but at the end of the day, it's setting up a platform with guardrails so that we can go faster in development. Much like if you've ever driven been on like a maglev train or a high-speed train, well, not here in the U.S., but in China, right? There's guardrails. This thing goes on, and those guardrails, help guide the train and allow it to achieve, 200-mile-an-hour speeds. To me, that's what platform engineering does here, and there's no reason why we can't use AI to help us with those platform engineering guardrails. But once those guardrails are in place And it may mean cutting back from the 150 different models in production and standardization on certain models. But once they're in place, we should be high-speed bullet trains in terms of development and software engineering. It should allow us to go faster with less friction. And I think that's always been the goal before AI, during AI, and anything that comes in the future. And again, smart platform engineers, just like smart people everywhere, will harness AI to make that better and doable.
Well, Hope, do you think the platforms that we have in place today are going to be extensible enough to manage all these models, or do we need to kind of go back into the whole stack and say, we got to modernize this thing? Because we have, to your point about guardrails, I was just reading this article about EVs are so heavy that they're blowing right through the guardrails we have, and we might have to replace every guardrail that's on the highway because we have all these EV vehicles now. Is DevOps going to have the same kind of experience where the CI/CD platform that was built and deployed 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago wasn't designed for this?
Oh, I definitely see innovation coming. Two things I think that are going to really force this issue even more. One, security and compliance. Massive amounts of sensitive data potentially being run through some of the models, maybe now prime targets for some security vulnerabilities, challenges with compliance. This is going to be so complex. Different models handling different data sources that have varying levels of sensitivity, all maybe converging to a single application. So platform engineering will have to figure out how are we going to offer the built-in security protocols and the automation. We need to manage identity. We need to manage access control. We need to manage data governance across all of these. And hopefully most of this is automated. That is not something that can be managed team by team and ensure that your enterprise is meeting the standard. But also monitoring and observability for AI models. I think that is going to be so crucial. And we already know a lot about monitoring and observability, but now what do we need to monitor and look for in production environments for these? Now, are we also looking at drift, bias, degradation over time? Platform engineering will have to take another look at the toolkit and see what has to be done.
Yeah, Hope, the interesting, I'm glad you brought up the monitoring and observability piece. One of the things that kind of comes to mind very quickly is in our research, we see that 75% of respondents indicate that they use 6 to 15 different observability tools to understand what's going on within their environment, yet they're only monitoring and observing 54% of their high-valued applications. So they're not even looking at their entire environment, right? So they're using this complex environment with all these tools, and it doesn't make it easy, right? Not to mention that they have to put the underlying tech stack in place in order to run what they're trying to build. So there's definitely an evolution coming. There's definitely a kind of I would call it a unification of the management side of it, as well as a unification of the tech stack to get it done.
Yeah, I think there's going to be, in the average enterprise, 3 years out, thousands of these AI models running around. They're getting smaller and more domain specific, and that's awesome. They're going to be better and smarter, but the management and the orchestration and the degradation of these platforms is going to be a huge headache.
I think that's why you got to set up guardrails. But I smell opportunity. I'm the optimist. I'm that little boy who looks in that room and says, there's a pony there somewhere. I could smell it. Anyway, I think this is a good time to call a wrap on this version of Techstrong Gang. I hope you at home have enjoyed today's show. I had a lot of fun. I hope Mike and Paul, and hope you guys did too. It was. And, these are going to be themes, I think, and stories we're going to be coming back to. But for now, I'll point you, we have a Tech Field Day Live going on today. I think following this, that people will be able to join in on, as well as our whole Techstrong TV lineup. So stay tuned for that. And we'll be back here tomorrow with another great Techstrong gang. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong, and we're out.